Welcome, friends. Welcome to Ed Hartman's Wild World of Music and Film. Today, we have the most amazing, incredible man about town, Michael Starr, joining me. Hello, Michael.
Ed Hartman.
Yes.
We have been on Wild World.
That's right. We have worked together. Michael not only is a great filmmaker, but he runs, I can't pronounce the name of his company, Homunculi, whatever.
Homunculi artists.
Like mushrooms or something, right?
No, homunculi is it's like a Frankenstein kind of creature made from alchemy.
Oh, okay. Well, of course. Anyway, but Michael helped with my DVD of, I can even show it. What do you know? See his work of As the Earth Turns. Yeah, there it is. Which you can get on Turner Classic Movies shop and Amazon and Walmart. But get on Turner Classic Movies because I get more money that way. Anyway, it's true. Well, it's because Amazon cuts everything in half in price. But I shouldn't tell anybody that because they'd get it cheaper. Anyway, thank you, Michael, for coming. And thanks for all the help on that. That really was very nice work. And you helped with all sorts of things. That was an ordeal. So.
Well, I mean, maybe for you.
Yeah,
I mean, for us, it's always, it's always a pleasure to kind of, help other filmmakers kind of get their work out there. I mean, I, for one, am an indie rights person as well. And I was lucky enough to get my movie with them because, I mean, we're everywhere.
That's right. Yeah.
We're on 6 or 7 streaming platforms. You can watch the movie for free on Roku, Amazon, and Tubi. You can purchase the DVDs and Blu-rays, which we have as well. That was our first adventure into the DVD and Blu-ray realm. But I mean, the more we do, the better we get. So, glad we could help you make your dreams come true.
Yes. And I've actually made more money on the DVD than I have on some of the streaming.
It's interesting.
Physical media, baby.
It's old school, but people like to have something physical.
Well, and our film was premiered on Turner Classic Movies on Halloween. So, I mean,
perfect.
How do you beat that with Jacqueline
And if you
Stewart?
haven't seen Ed's movie, it's unique.
That's right. It's made by somebody in 1938. And I produced it. So,
yes.
Yeah. Anyway, and just for everybody out there, my documentary continues to be in film festivals. It Gets in Your Blood, about Richard Lyford, the director of As the Earth Turns. And in fact, Shockfest is coming up, a great horror film festival. And both films, As the Earth Turns and It Gets in Your Blood, are going to be featured on that, which is kind of cool. It's online. Anyway, so what I'd like to do, Michael, is start with you. And I've noticed I've had a number of Michaels on this program. That seems to be a common name for directors. I don't know why. So,
were they all born in the 70s?
I have no idea.
That was a very popular name in the 70s.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. There's only one other. In IMDb, there's Edmund Hartman, who was a producer. He did Family Affair and stuff like that. But I tend to be a little more on my own on IMDb, which is nice. So. Is there more than one Michael Starr out there on IMDb?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. As a matter of fact, Mike Starr is the big confusion. He was in Dumb and Dumber, and he's done a lot of gangster films. He's a big guy, not like me at all, but he's an excellent actor. I love his work, but for some reason, people think that he directed my movie.
Yeah.
Go IMDb.
Well, I think a long time ago on BMI, I got there was a incorrect royalty from the other Edmund Hartman or something. It was like 2 cents, something from some 1960s television show. All right. Well, I have my James Lipton 10 questions that I use as a subtle outline for this, but we don't need to stay on them very much, but they're kind of fun. So first of all, where are you from, and where are you now? And we want details. Mother's maiden name, whatever you got.
Oh yeah, well, I won't divulge that. That's just too deep.
Okay.
So I'll go fairly deep. I am from a little town on Long Island called Farmingville, um, where I lived most of my youth, um, basically playing in rock bands and, you know, writing short stories and, eventually moved up in the world to the professional realm when I grew up a little bit, um, where I actually went to nursing school and got a job working as an RN, for many, 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 many years. And granted, you're an artist, and you feel like your calling is music and writing and all that great stuff. Uh, but you grow up in a small town, or you grow up in a rural setting, which is more suburban than rural, and you get a lot of mentality of you got to have something to fall back on. All the grown-ups in your life are like, it's great to have a dream, but reality dictates that you need to make money. So I listened to a lot of people that had real no artistic ability, and spent too much time kind of trying to make ends meet instead of trying to meet my dream. And I think in my third or fourth year of nurse, no, it was my second, third year of nursing, 9/11 happened, and it kind of woke me up a little bit.
Hmm.
I was able to kind of see the bigger picture of, okay, well, if I'm going to die by the hands of some fanatic, I should go out and live my life the way I want on my terms. So I packed up, joined a nursing travel company where they basically, it was, I don't want to call it militant, or military style living, but every 3 months I would choose a new location and I would move to that location, any place I chose. It wasn't like they were putting me in places. So my first real adventure was Boston. And I lived in Boston for about 3 months, worked at Brigham and Women's Hospital in neurotrauma. Lots of crooked heads and helmets and, things like that. People basically falling off of ladders or getting head injuries, and, they need surgery on their brains. It's quite something. But I was there for 3 months at the end of the summer, and had a wonderful experience living there. And I said, you know what? I'm going to basically, follow my dream. So I recorded a full album of music. Just basically me and a couple of friends, you know, did everything on this record. It's, heavy metal, kind of hard rock, aggressive type stuff, which I love. And eventually just kind of finished the record on the road out to California, recorded vocals, moved to San Diego for about 3 more months. And then that place actually burned to the ground during the Miramar fires. That was quite interesting. I had never experienced an entire county basically evacuate a 750,000 acre fire. So that kind of shut the city down, and my love for, travel. So I moved to LA, where I had a couple of friends up here, and I was able to kind of be more engrossed in the music because that's what their genre is. You know, their careers are music. So I was able to kind of, you know, be within circles where I could be more creative as a musician, and you know, ended up staying in Los Angeles. So the that kind of helped me get to where things are today, which is, you know, we'll get to that, but
Wow.
that's how I got here.
Well, that's involved, man. And if that sounds like a movie to me.
Yeah,
Honestly,
biopic. Yeah.
yeah. Well, no, I did this the experience in the military nursing fleet. You know? I mean
Yeah.
that could be a very interesting story. I mean, I'm sure there were amazing adventures going on.
Yeah,
I,
and again, I'm not military. It was just
the nature of it, yeah.
it was just the idea of how you could move around without living in one particular place for too long. So it was 3-month contracts
Right.
where, you know, you were, it was an agency really. So
I
the agency found, you know, places like, oh, we have a place in Burbank, you know, that's open. Are you interested? I'm
but
like,
it gave you an opportunity to move
yeah, well,
around.
they
Yeah.
housed me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have moved if I wasn't a traveling nurse. If I didn't
Right.
have the guts to go out and start traveling as a nurse, I wouldn't have made it to California.
Well, my understanding is during COVID, nurses are moving around like crazy because they can actually make incredible amounts of money when
Oh
they
yeah. I
go
mean,
elsewhere.
lots of, just as an education on travel nursing and nursing in general. I was a nurse for 13 years. I still have a license, but it's not active. And the last time I actually physically touched a patient was right before I went into film school at USC back in 2011. So 2010 was kind of the last hurrah for me. And then I went to film school and I've been working in the industry ever since. But before that, um, you know, the idea of working as a temporary nurse in a place that I've never been was very exciting. You know, you kind of have this an anonymity, and you know, they bring you in, and if they really like you, they ask you to stay. Um, you know, or you have the option to leave after 3 months and go
Right.
somewhere else.
Right.
So I was avoiding the winter, and I moved to San Diego.
Right.
So, but it was an experience for sure.
San Diego is I understand is perpetual spring.
It
Although it
chills.
has its hot moments.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of marine layer there at night. You can't
Yeah.
see 4 inches in front of your face sometimes. It's
Really. Oh.
crazy.
Okay. All right. And what's interesting is that you do have a whole musical side to what you're doing. So
Yeah.
the musical side was kind of not necessarily where there's a lot of training involved in there. Or was that just something you kind of picked up along the
Uh,
line?
well, you know, I began in elementary school playing the cello,
Oh, okay.
but that instrument wasn't. I mean, I love it to death. It's one of my favorite orchestral instruments of all time. But I needed to beat things up. Yeah, you know, you kind of have a lot of angst and frustration sometimes, and I just wanted to hit skins. So I got a
Ah,
drum set and started playing the drums, and you know, was in the drum corps at school for a while, and I, you know, was in some private corps. Um, Learned a lot rudimentary stuff there, and then, you know, some of my favorite drummers are, you know, prog drummers. So I'm a big, you know, Rush fan. Yes, King Crimson, Dream Theater. Um, you know, I love
yeah,
straight ahead rock music too. I love
right.
Led Zeppelin and, you know, Sabbath and all those bands that were big influences in my youth. Um, but I do feel like, you know, as I progressed as a musician, I picked up the guitar and a little bit of keyboards and some bass, and you know, I am a vocalist as well, so I sang all the music, all the songs
Wow.
on my record as
One
well.
man band. All right.
Yeah,
I'm impressed with the drummer side. That's great to hear. I'm a percussionist. I mean, that's really my main instrument, but
hmm
the piano is necessary for everything else.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a mallet player too. Play on marimba and vibes and have those instruments. So,
sure,
that's where my keyboard skills developed. And that's great to hear. And I think anybody that becomes a percussionist, their whole sense of rhythm gets enhanced, and
mm.
just their whole sense of musicianship gets better. Because you know when to play.
Yeah. I got the garbage truck backing up here. Can you hear
Oh,
that?
beep beep.
Yep.
All
Good
right.
times living in the city.
And then the film side, it sounds like. So, what was your inspiration to get into film? How did that happen?
Well, okay. It wasn't necessarily something that I thought about as a career. Um, when I was about 15 years old, I had um, I had seen Terry Gilliam's Brazil,
Yeah.
and it inspired me. It was the film that, for its time, there was nothing like it on the planet. I mean, he had basically tapped into perfection, in my opinion. You know,
Yeah.
growing up with your typical sci-fi blockbusters, Spielberg and Lucas, and you have all these movies out there that are, you know, very straightforward storytelling. And I had seen Time Bandits, which blew my mind as a
That's a great
teenager.
movie. Great movie.
Yeah,
Oh
and
man.
Time Bandits was just one of those things where I'm like, what am I watching?
Right.
you know, I'm 13 years old, maybe 12 years old, and I'm like, this movie's a lot of fun and I'm having a great time. Never seen
Right.
anything like it. It was disturbingly realistic period piece for Terry Gilliam, I guess. But what I really loved was the fact that Brazil was a completely disjointed thing.
Yeah.
It was this dystopic future that looked like it was in the past,
Yeah.
and it was this mystery. Just, I don't know how to describe it, but it was one of those things where I'm watching this movie unfold and I'm like, again, what am I watching?
Yeah. That movie in 1984, the one that came out, are kind of both of them kind of
Well,
freak me out. They're like love children.
well, no, ironically, Gilliam uh, had a secret name for Brazil. It was called 1984 and a half.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I can see it. I mean, I've
And
occasionally gotten those movies mixed up in my brain.
right.
You know.
But it is super Orwellian, but it's also very Gilliam. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that movie inspired me to write a screenplay at 15.
Wow.
And it wasn't necessarily very good, but that was the first time I really thought about filmmaking. And then, I worked in a theater as an usher for a while, so I got to see a lot of interesting movies in the multiplex. And then, you kind of think about, like, okay, I'm a writer, I'm a musician, I'm a photographer. I did photography for many years, professionally. Um, and I was like, all right, well, how can I use all of those mediums? And film just seemed to be the way to go. So once, I was able to at least move into that, short film realm, um, after I started dating, who is now my wife, uh, an actress. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to write something for you. And I decided to do something very like Amelie, kind of fun little comedic thing. And we we shot it, and I kind of got bitten by the bug. I was like, you know what, this is a lot more fun than I thought it would be, and I'm going to apply to film schools. So I just kind of got into it, roundabout,
Yeah.
just by, dating an actress and kind of having the ability to like use um that resource.
Use what you got.
Right? Smoke them if you got them.
Yeah. All right. And then you wound up at USC, and that was around 2011. You said?
Yeah, I you know, didn't plan on going to film schools. I actually went to something called 4-week film school up in Maine. It's Maine Media Workshops. They have in Rockport. They have a 4-week film school that basically you live. It's like a sleepaway camp for adults. They have these 1-week intensives, and then they have these 4-week intensive. They have a documentary intensive and a narrative intensive. And basically there were 10 people in the class. We shot 10 short films on 16 millimeter.
Wow.
We shot on digital video. We did a lot of short films, but it was 4 solid weeks, 6 days a week. So it was basically,
That's a year. You're in college.
it's intensive. It's super intense, but it really gave me the tools before I got into film school to kind of understand what was happening before you get in,
Yeah.
To the immersive side of university film school, which is completely different.
Right.
It's a lot slower moving, but it's still very fast paced. So I applied to like 6 major film schools and got into arguably the #1 film school in the world. I mean, a lot of people would say NYU or
Right.
AFI, but AFI is one of those schools where, you learn one skill. You're either it's a what do they call it?
More of a tech school in a way.
It's not a tech school. It's not like a university, but it's a school where you learn one skill at a time. So it's like, if
Right.
you're going for directing, you're directing. If you're going for screenwriting, you're screenwriting. It's a master's degree. You have to have an undergrad, and it's like Juilliard,
Right.
or
Your instrument.
yeah, it's like one of those things where you study one particular skill, and that's your skill.
Yeah.
Whereas USC, NYU, they kind of, Chapman actually is a very good one too. You get a little bit more rounded education.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to I went to Indiana University and got a degree in percussion, but I was constantly jumping all around doing other things.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was getting pigeonholed. It was a great school. I didn't mind it.
It's a conservatory. AFI is a conservatory.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of like where you
Right.
kind of,
Right.
but believe me, they are extremely good at what they do. They graduate a lot of excellent people there.
Yeah. And how long was USC?
I did an extra semester, so it was about 3.5 semesters.
Okay.
Not 3.5 semesters. It was 3.5 years. It's a 3-year program for the master's level.
Right.
But I did a thesis. I basically did a thesis project where I wrote a script, budgeted the script, scheduled the script, did marketing and prep. Basically, it was a package. I had to prep a package, and then I had to defend it in front of industry producers. But I studied for 2 years under Barnett Kellman, who is one of my mentors. He's a directing guru. He did Murphy Brown and Mad About You. He's directed ER, Monk. He did movies. He's done just about everything you can possibly imagine, but his knowledge base, I was his assistant for 2 years at the school, plus, having that connection to him, that closeness really allowed me to kind of hone my directing skills, where also, you know, I studied under David Isaacs and Jack Epps, who worked on, Jack Epps was a co-writer on Top Gun and, Secret of My Success and Legal Eagles. And David Isaacs, basically, he's a legend. He worked on MASH, Cheers, Frasier, Mad Men. I mean, the guy, you get to be in their presence, and what you learn from them is invaluable, because they're just regular people that really understand the craft, and really helps you kind of get there. But I could have done a directing thesis, but that would have been an extra $20,000 to borrow, and everybody understands that USC is not necessarily the cheapest school in the world to go to. It's a private university. So I decided to learn the business side as well as the artistic side. So I was able to move into the realm of producing as a writer and director. So that's how I was able to kind of like start prepping Cicada Song.
Yeah. All right. Are there, getting to the film and music side of things, we'll get to your film in a minute here, but
sure.
Are there any filmmaker composer combinations that you get drawn to? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, there's the industry standard of Spielberg and Williams.
Yep.
Quite
Can't
frankly,
stand them. I'm kidding.
I mean, my favorite score from John Williams to date is probably Close Encounters.
Oh yeah.
Because it doesn't sound like any other film that he's done.
Nope.
And it's just a very uplifting score. It doesn't sound like Strauss or Wagner. Right. It sounds like something original. And that movie still to date is, I mean, I saw that movie when I was a kid with my dad.
Yeah.
And I still remember seeing it in the movie theater and just being wowed.
I still love that movie, just watching it whenever it's on. It's one of the
you
most
look at it
entertaining
today,
things, you can ever watch, though.
You look at it today and it's like, it's still beautiful and it's still wonderful, but you look at the character of the dad,
right?
And like he's just abandoning his family to go to outer space.
Yeah, it was a little hard to watch.
Yeah, most women that see that movie are like, oh, okay, so the strongest character in the movie is Melinda Dillon,
right?
The mom character who's like chasing her son down, trying to get him back from the aliens. And the most childlike character in the film is the man child who wants to go with the aliens.
Yeah.
Well, it's her story, I think.
Yeah, and the last section of that film, Williams scored without picture, because the picture was actually being processed at that point. So that's why it has a very, a classical feel to it.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's not just a composer synchronizing the picture. They're literally writing a suite.
Yeah, they're making the movie to the music,
and then Spielberg has to cut to the picture to that.
It's brilliant.
And what's mind-boggling is that and to this day, Williams is pen and paper. He'll watch a scene and then he'll write it by memory, and at that point he had to work that all out. That's just astounding to me.
No, that's amazing. But I do have to say that Clint Mansell and Darren Aronofsky might be my favorite combo.
What films are that?
If you've seen any Darren Aronofsky movie, Um,
I don't know. I'm not that.
okay, well, Clint Mansell is well, okay, so Darren Aronofsky is he did a movie called Pi back in the
Yeah.
90s.
Right. Right.
And he did um another movie called Requiem for a Dream right
Oh
after that.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Surreal stuff.
no, I
All
mean
the
it's
way.
brilliant. Brilliant. I mean, the way that he can the way he puts his movies together, he's another inspiration, you know, for me as an independent film. Um, he really kind of takes you on that journey of surrealism.
Yeah.
Like he knows how to really mess with your head. It's just one of those things where I was watching Requiem for a Dream, uh, and I remember in the climax of the film, I just remember once because the music is building with the editing, and the tension is just mounting as you're going forward. And I just remember, like, once the music released and there was this emotional release from Jared Leto, I actually found myself taking a breath. Like I remember taking a deep breath after watching this, because I don't think I actually breathed
Right.
for like a minute. I was
Yeah.
literally like breathless.
Yeah.
And once that release happened, I just went, and that had a huge impact on me because it wasn't a big movie. It had Jennifer Connelly, Jared Leto, and I want to say it was Marlon Wayans in a serious role. It was not a comedy at all. And
No.
Ellen Burstyn should have won the Academy Award for that movie. Should have
Yeah.
won that award, but I think she was robbed. They gave it to Aaron Brockovich.
Yeah.
Yeah, but quite frankly, um, that's the kind of movie you only really want to see once.
Yeah.
It's
I know what you mean
heartbreaking,
there. There's a couple of them
heartbreaking.
I haven't had
Yeah,
that
but
didn't want to watch
the
again.
Fountain, I think the Fountain
Yeah.
is kind of Clint Mansell's masterpiece, because he was working with a band called Mogwai, and it was a collaboration between Clint Mansell and Mogwai. And Mogwai is like a Scandinavian band. They're instrumental. They're very theatrical,
Hmm.
and they are they're one of the bands that I actually write to, because I don't have to think. It's just atmosphere and really interesting rhythms and you know. But I do have to say that Clint Mansell and Darren Aronofsky, probably my favorite combo.
Really? Okay. Anything going back to early film, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, as far as composers, filmmaker combinations? You'll be graded on this answer.
Then I will fail. um,
There's a lot of guys back there. A lot of them came from Germany and after the war too.
well,
So
yeah, the Impressionists,
yeah,
obviously, but I think a lot of the stuff that was going on back then was, I would say, Straussian,
yeah,
um, and Wagnerian. It
yeah,
was
yeah.
it was more about the, okay, let's borrow from classical composers to or use the actual compositions in those films, because the copyright laws were different then. And
Well, a lot of them were classical composers
right,
too,
well, that's the thing. I mean, like,
or
Dracula was,
directors, and yeah,
I think Dracula used was not original music at all. It was all based on I didn't even know, was it
There's not a
Was it?
lot of music in Dracula, but
No, but
I
was
think
it?
you're right. I think there is.
I can't remember if it
Yeah,
was Liszt
yeah, I know what you're
or
saying. It's hidden in my head. I'm kind of
yeah.
remembering
But as
it.
far as old school composer, like old world composers, I don't know enough about them. I know more about the classical side of, where the influence came from.
Right,
Like
right,
John Williams is very Straussian,
right.
you know, which is also influenced by Wagner,
Yeah,
you know, and that's where I kind of like see the classical side of that.
right, right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about your film. So I watched it a few days ago, Cicada Song, and I'm still thinking about it. I was a little confused in the beginning, going, "Who is who here?" Which I don't know if that was just me or that was intentional. I felt like I was watching that Seinfeld movie, that Seinfeld episode where everything was backwards.
Yeah, there's a narrative. It's a broken narrative.
Yeah.
you know it's
Well, it messed with
without
my
giving away
head.
spoilers, because it is a mystery
Yeah.
thriller. Essentially, we follow one character really through the whole film, and that's Karen, played by Lindsay Lance beautifully, I think.
Yeah.
um, and she is left for dead in the wilderness, and that's kind of where we start, is based on this like little tag of, you know somebody basically left for dead. But
Yeah.
then we go back and we start piecing how things kind of got there, but we kind of move throughout the story, coming back to that journey as well. So we have an A story and a B story where eventually they're going to come together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was something that I borrowed from Jacob's Ladder,
Hmm.
the Adrian Lyne movie with Tim Robbins,
Right.
because that movie also made a big impression on me. I had read the script; it was on the blacklist back in the '90s, and I was like, "This." It was one of those movies that they couldn't make at the time when it was written, but Adrian Lyne found a way to make it work. And Jacob, if you haven't seen Jacob's Ladder, it's really disturbing, but it's
Yeah.
beautiful. But it was the way that he just peppered in moments that seemed like flashbacks. And without giving that away either, it inspired me to kind of say, okay, well, I don't have to necessarily tell a linear story. Although the story is linear, it's working its way towards connecting the dots.
And this.
So it is a brain movie. You do have to
Yeah.
use your brain a little bit.
So how did it come about? I mean, you decided to do it? It was original? Who wrote the story? Was that you?
Yeah.
Okay, original. Very nice.
Thank you.
And then you just started the process of, I'm going to write the screenplay, I'm going to raise money, I'm going to put a production company together. Just all that happened in what, a month?
And,
A couple of weeks anyway, right?
well, you know what it is that we started the the story was concepted when I was still in film school.
Hmm.
And I wanted to do kind of a movie that, you know, like a mystery, somebody left for dead in the wilderness. But that was something I discussed with Lindsay, because I said, if you could do any movie, what would you want to do? She's like, a survival movie. I said, okay. And I said, how gritty do you want to get? She's like, the grittier, the better. So I was like, all right, great. So sure enough, I was working on another script that we were planning to shoot, and I saw this advertisement on Netflix that looked awfully familiar to what I had written in 2014, 2013 actually. And when I watched the show, it was my story, and it was a little too on the nose for it to be a coincidence.
Really?
So I was very angry. And, it happens, there's a lot of thieving that happens in Hollywood. And the problem is that, you could still do it. It's just, they've already done it, and that's one of the things where I kind of don't like submitting to certain film festivals or script contests, or, you have to really know if it's legit, like the Nickel Fellowship is a pretty legitimate, script contest, but we took the script to AFM and we met with a bunch of people, and a couple of them asked them for the script, which was copyrighted and registered. And this company in Belgium basically, I don't know how or what the story is, but it didn't seem like it was parallel thought. There were just too many things that were in my original script that nobody in the world would have that thought, in my opinion. So I was so angry that I was like, all right, we're going to go back to that old idea of survival film, and we're just going to make a movie that we can afford to make on, a modest budget with, no stars, but we're going to make it as professionally as we can. We're going to take all the skills that I learned from film school, producing, directing, writing. I had, friends that were on the other side on this side of the camera that, had equipment and experience in cinematography that were willing to do the film for credits and points, so we shared, revenue. But what ended up happening was we had to write the script. So I called Lindsay, and my fiance at the time was, now my wife, Kim Reed. Basically, we got together and started kind of piecing together a puzzle that, okay, it's a story that takes place in a rural setting. It was 2017, so we basically were in the throes of, a lot of stuff was happening in the United States at that time,
Right.
with, immigration and
Yeah.
anger and people just, not really sure about what was happening. It was just a really interesting
Where was it
time.
shot?
And we were like, you know what? I mean, this is important. And it, we were upset about a few things, and we were like, you know what? Let's not make a huge political statement, but let's make a statement that we feel, would be genre. We wanted a mystery thriller, but we didn't really have the element of what was happening. So we decided that, we were brainstorming ideas, and Kim basically said, what about families that have been separated, or, human trafficking? And I was like, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So we added the element of human trafficking into a missing person story.
Yeah. And you
So
have a variety of characters of different orientations, and that, yeah, it's a nice mix. I mean, there's almost everybody's in there, you know.
well, what we wanted to do was make an entertaining film, something that we wanted to see, and everybody was on board. I said to Ryan, our cinematographer, I want a beautiful independent film. And we ended up going to Missouri because Lindsay, like we realized that it was going to be too expensive to shoot in California.
Hmm.
You know, we didn't know any farmers in California. We didn't know, you know, there weren't many settings that we could really make the story happen. But we were like, well, you know, what's really interesting is Lindsay said I might have someone who would be interested in working with us. He owns a farm, but we'd have to shoot it in Missouri. And I said, you know what? Story could work there because, you know, we didn't want Missouri to represent, we didn't want to represent Missouri in a negative state.
Right.
You know, there are, but we did want Missouri to represent the metaphor of America. So there are allies and there are enemies, and you know there's a balance. Although because of the character's sexual orientation, there's not a lot of love for her character to begin
That's
with.
right. Well, there's the mix is what's interesting about it because, and you don't know who's on what side all the time.
Right.
There's people
Yeah,
are changing.
that's part of the
That's part of
game,
the
right?
mystery. That's
Keep
right.
them
Yeah.
always be
Yeah.
one step ahead of your audience
That's
until
right.
you allow them to catch up. That's the Billy Wilder rule, you know.
Right.
Give them 2 + 2, but don't tell them it equals 4.
Yeah, and there's some good twists on there. And
Yeah.
the you worked with an interesting composer.
Alex Williamson, yeah.
Right. Nice score. It's a nice mix of ambient, light orchestra strings, piano. You know, I like the soundscape. I think the name Cicada Song starting that's really intriguing to me. The beginning because that makes use of that really well.
Yeah.
Kind of sets a tone.
Well,
You know.
that's interesting that you mentioned tone because, you know, when you're working on a movie, you know, you have your temp tracks, you know, you have your ideas. And I only had one temp track in the whole movie, and that was the opening credits. And that was from the Cinematic Orchestra, which is, if you've not listened to the Cinematic Orchestra and you're into cinematic music, they're amazing. You know, they did composition on a flamingo documentary. You know, it was about flamingos, and I remember listening to the music and not knowing where it came from, and I'm like, what is wrong with the flamingos? This music is like super emotional and powerful, and I'm like, this is crazy. That made me want to see the movie.
Wow.
But anyway, their temp track was something that I really felt was part of the mood the tone that I wanted to capture. So, and I had one other song at the end of the movie by a band called Other Lives,
Right.
which we ended up getting the rights for just for festival use. So the festival climax had a different song than the actual release of the movie because, you know, it's an independent film. You know, major band wants, you know, their publicist wants 10 grand just for the, you know, licensing rights. And we're like, yeah, I don't think so. We can't do that. You know, that's a lot of money for us.
Right.
So we tried to negotiate, but they wouldn't budge. So we ended up having Alex write a 5-minute piece for the end of the movie, which is all basic montage, you know.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of that.
But he came up with the tone. You know, I didn't know what I was looking for, and he sent me some swatches of music, and I just was like, you know, I didn't hear that initially, and I think you've elevated the tension. You know, he was the one that elevated the tension in the film with his music.
Oh yeah.
And I said, you know, here's some ideas. You know, I'm like a big fan of Trent Reznor and, you know, Atticus Ross. I'm a big fan of Peter Gabriel, The Passion, particularly. Um, it's just one of the.
I heard a little Thomas Newman, you know, kind of creeping in there at
It's
times.
possible. I'm not
You know,
familiar with him, but I can tell you that
part of the Newman family.
Randy, gotcha.
Randy and yeah,
Yeah,
he does a lot of ambient stuff that's just kind of like
which
this
is interesting
piano,
because
just kind of, you know, just that, really,
sure,
really in heavily reverb, you know, just piano
sure.
in the distance sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah, but I told Alex, I was like, you know, you be artistic, do what you feel is right. I said the mood is this, and he created that mood. There was one, I think, one instance where I felt like it was too big, and he was
Hmm.
like, "Really?
Right,
I can bring it back?" I said, "Yes, please do. Bring it way back. A little more subtle instead of emotional climax. I
right.
want more, you know, subtle." He was thrilled
How long
because
did it take him to do the score?
actually a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, and there's not music throughout, so
No, there's only about 15 to 20 minutes worth of music, and it's a
right.
73-minute,
Yeah, it's not that long of a
you
movie,
know,
right?
film, you know, and our end credits, you know, I got to tell you, the music that we were able to get in the film as far as background,
Hmm.
all friends of mine, um, every single one of them was happy to contribute music. Um, and I can tell you that a lot of the stuff that happens musically in the film um, is just amazing. You know, a lot of these people are professional songwriters, so
The,
I am very lucky to have their
yeah,
music.
so the closing credits song, that's really cool tune.
Oh, that's yeah, that's Susie Glaze and the High Lonesome band.
Yeah.
But that's a cover by Gene Ritchie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Gene Ritchie wrote the original, and they covered it, and they put it on their album. And I couldn't think of a better song, you know, to close the movie. I was just said so much about what we were trying to say.
Right, right. Well, no, you know, I was thinking that a film that kind of it reminded me of was Witness. You know,
That's a
that
good one
has
to
a
be
kind of a
compared to.
dreamy, kind of a little bit of a dreamy nature to it. And you used a lot of, you know, focal point techniques where things were out blurry on the sides, and you know, it was kind of quasi dream sequences and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah. I mean, Peter Weir is one of my favorite directors of all time,
Yeah,
and Witness, to be compared to Witness, is
yeah,
awesome. Thank you for that.
yeah. Oh no, no. Yeah, well, it had
Yeah,
that, you know, kind of you're you're in another place, you know. I mean that's
yeah.
definitely fish out of water, big time. You know.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
I think it's highly underrated, but it's so good, so good. Um, yeah.
So the film is it was finished what 2019?
No, we finished it in 2018. We
Right.
shot it in 2017 in October and early December. So we shot principal, outdoor, and indoor in Missouri. And then we shot a few things in California. We did about a week. You know, we had to prep about a month for California. So we had a month off after Missouri, and then we went in for about a week and shot the end of the movie, shot the interior of their house in our apartment,
Ah, okay.
and you'd never know,
The
you know,
illusion of
movie magic.
movies. That's right. Open this
But
door and you're somewhere else.
yeah, but I mean, even the migrant home. We shot the exterior in Missouri and the interior in California.
And as the Earth turns, I actually did a couple hour tour of where he made that movie. I got to know the gal that owns that house now,
Mm-hmm.
and she analyzed where all the scenes were. He used an amazing amount of his house for that movie.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, this, if there's proof that a movie, at least a good movie, well acted, good looking film can be made for a, a modest budget and still feel like it cost a lot more. Um, I tell this to filmmakers all the time.
Yeah.
If it's your first movie, you don't need to spend more than 100 grand. If you're going to use a lot of locations and a lot of things, you could spend less than that,
Yeah.
way less than that, and still get quality. It's just a matter of your knowledge of getting that quality. It's all about lighting and sound.
So, coming into the current, what are you working on these days? Anything coming up as far as films?
Well, actually, as we were making Cicada Song, I was also working on a documentary, uh, work for hire, but it was a good 5 years before we actually finished it. And the documentary is called "It's in the Blood." Yes, I know, Ed.
Oh, come on, man! This is the second time somebody has a blood in their title. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
But our documentary is about the origins of Chattanooga dirt track racing.
Right.
Um, and it's definitely something that it's more about the passion of racing than it is about like the guts and glory of NASCAR. It's more about how these guys just loved to do it. They built their own
Right.
cars, their own, racetracks. Like it was something. A lot of them went on to be big time or close to big time racers. But I'm happy to say that Indie Rights asked us for that movie as well. They were very
Wow.
interested in distributing that film, and
And
we actually just I'm prepping that movie for delivery now.
wow, that's impressive because I know docs are having a little more of a challenging time for streaming these days.
Yeah, well, I will say that it is a niche movie. It does
Yeah.
have a fan base already.
Right.
So hopefully we can, turn that into something, decent as far as, getting it out there and having people kind of respond to it, in a way that we would like them to. Um, but it is a documentary kind of in the sense of, we do have some legendary NASCAR Hall of Famers in the movie talking about these Chattanooga guys that were extremely competitive, and the mechanics that built the cars, the racers that really kind of brought them forward, into the realm of some stardom.
Right.
But it's an interesting story. I mean, it's not something I thought I would do in my career because I'm not necessarily a big,
Right.
racing fan. I was more interested in the stories and also how some of these guys were racing the law on the streets of Chattanooga and in the mountains, hauling moonshine, and that's how a lot of them got into it.
Right. Right.
They were souping up these old cars with Cadillac engines. They were putting Cadillac engines in next to Ford transmissions.
All you need is Burt Reynolds. You got a movie.
Burt Reynolds got a lot from these guys,
That's right.
but they were making. I think there was one guy that we interviewed that wouldn't go on camera. He's like, oh, I've had enough run-ins with the law. I don't want my face out there. He was like 80 years old,
Wow.
and it was like decades since he had any, you know, any run-ins with anything, but he told us he was making in 1954, 1955, he was making 4,000 gallons of moonshine a week in the mountains on a still that they put together with, like, you know, they soldered the pieces. They I don't know how they did it. And then they would move all of that product from the mountains in a remote location into downtown Chattanooga, where a lot of their customers were the Black community, which was really interesting because Chattanooga was a dry town.
Yeah, well,
I think Tennessee was a dry state until 1972 or 73.
yeah.
So you couldn't get liquor by the drink in a bar. You could buy it as a bottle and drink it in your home, but people didn't want to pay the tax on it. So basically they would get it from these moonshiners that were making it from corn or sugar. And it was something that they made a lot of money doing in the 50s. Like, these guys would be considered millionaires today.
Right. Well, I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, and it was a dry town when I grew up, next to Chicago, and so people would go across the border to the liquor stores, and that's because it was the home of the Women's Christian Temperance Union.
Sure. I saw that show.
Yeah, and then it finally it opened up. I remember beer and wine became available for the first time, and then slowly it got deeper and deeper. But for a while, you could bring your own wine to a restaurant.
Right. Then to where, you know, if you brought your own wine,
they would have to
they'd serve it in a water glass.
Right.
Because the law would state that if it's served in a liquor glass, you need a liquor license.
Right.
But if it's served in a water glass,
it's juice.
It's juice. Yeah.
So what's your goal for the next 6 months?
Well, I am working on a couple of screenplays right now. One of them is with Connie Zastapol, who is she's one of the judges for one of the festivals that we won, and she really loved Cicada Song, and she wanted to work on something with me. So we have a script right now that I can't really talk about it because it's, you know, in pre-production, but we're shopping it right now to a couple of A-listers to see if we can get some talent on board. And then I'm working on another script with a music historian about Richard Strauss, and how he, you know, and his kind of influence, you know, how he grew up listening to Mendelssohn and Brahms, and how his father basically forbade him to listen to Wagner, which he ended up loving. But we all know Wagner is one of the godfathers of Nazi propaganda.
All right,
so,
that's right. Yeah.
So yeah, we have a story to tell there. So we're working on that.
So it's going to be quasi biopic sort of a thing, or
mostly biopic, but it's you know, more of an Amadeus approach.
Oh, okay.
You know, we have a lot of history because he's a historian, so we know a lot that happened, but we don't know what happened in between. And any, you know, biopic has an element of fabrication in between the historical events. So we're telling a story. You know, who is it? I'm sure it was a very successful screenwriter who said, "Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story." But we're telling as much truth as we possibly can, and it is an interesting story nonetheless. It's just something that I wanted to do because I heard a story on my way to school one day that involved Strauss and Wagner, that you know, and the musical factions that were at war during the 1800s. Crazy.
Sounds like a game. Sounds like a game show.
It's such an interesting story, which I'm really excited to be almost finished with it. But for the most part, you know, I'm also prepping a pilot for I'm prepping a pilot for a friend of mine who's a producer that, you know, I think he'd be very interested in. And it also has to do with the racing. It's about the woman that hired me, her grandfather, and how he was probably one of the best drivers in the South. He hauled moonshine for many, many years, but he allegedly won the inaugural Daytona 500 at the paved track. In the books, he came in third. But there are people that we interviewed and that were there that claim that he won.
Wow.
And they basically gave it to Lee Petty because they just didn't have the resources to kind of know who was winning.
Right.
Kind of weird.
Yeah. No photo finish, huh?
There is a photo finish. And that's the problem. The photo finish was with Lee Petty, Johnny Beauchamp, and I can't remember who the other guy was, but they said that her grandfather, Charlie, was a lap down. And the story is called One Lap Down. And he was a lap down, but in reality, he was actually a lap ahead.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Couldn't keep track.
They were just, you know, were just, you know, family members and cousins keeping score. Nobody really knew how to keep score. You know, you're talking about, you know, 200 plus laps.
Right.
And it's a 3-hour race, 3.5 hours.
That's a 120. Wait a minute, 120, 22? No, 20,
yeah.
I don't know.
It's crazy.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael. Michael Starr of Cicada Song and all things film and music. Big things to come. I'm sure we'll be seeing you at the Oscars soon.
I will say that anyone who is interested in seeing Cicada Song, you can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Tubi TV and Roku. Those are the free places you can watch the movie, if you don't mind advertisements. But if you want to see the movie straight through, you can rent it on Apple, Google Play, Vudu, and you can also buy the Blu-ray or the DVD on Amazon, Walmart, you know, the regular retail places. Yeah. As far as the racing movie goes, you can visit it'sinthebloodmovie.com. We're hoping that the movie will be available early next year, but we'll have postings for that on the website. Thank you for allowing me to plug that in.
You bet. No problem. Well, thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
Hopefully I will get to work with you again in the future for something, either musically or in the film business.
Indeed.
So thanks, folks, for listening, and we will see you next time.